So, as you guys may remember, I ran the New York City Marathon over the weekend.
Woohoo! Congrats!
Damn.
Here's the funniest thing about running a marathon. At mile 20, I actually slipped on a banana peel.
Stop.
No.
Yeah, I did.
Are you fucking kidding me?
I'm not.
I have never in my life ever seen a human being slip on a banana peel.
Yeah. So what happens is at that point you're in the Bronx, right? And at mile 20 is when they first start the volunteers who are giving you like water and Gatorade at every mile marker.
Uh-huh.
There are also the Chiquita people are giving you bananas at every mile. So
Oh, yes. Big banana.
Yeah. Imagine that there are 4,000 cups, empty cups of Gatorade that you're like crunching over. And then 1,000 banana peels that you're crunching over. And I hit one with my left foot just in the right spot, and my foot went out from under me. And thank God I did not fall over, because it would have been embarrassing as fuck to be like, yes, I had to bow out at mile 20 because I slipped on a banana peel.
Of all things.
Yeah, it's just like Billy Madison flashed before my eyes. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm O'Doyle. I do not rule.
Yeah, and then you would have like slid and then fallen all the way off the course, off the side of the course.
Exactly.
A cliff that miraculously appeared in the middle of New York City. Don't remember that cliff being here.
Everyone, and welcome to this week's Spoiler Piece Theater, the movie podcast that doesn't give a shit about spoilers. We just want to talk about the movies. My name is Megan Kearns. I'm a freelance writer and film critic, editor of Bitch Flicks, and a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association.
My name is Evan Crean. I'm editor for The Independent. I am co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and co-author of your 80s movie guide to better living.
And my name is Dave Riedel. I write for Salt Lake City Weekly and Orlando Weekly, and I'm a member of BAFCA. Woo!
Woohoo! We're all excited about BAFCA.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we are.
All right, so we have a lot to cover this episode. We're going to be covering some new releases that are coming out this week. We're also going to do some mini reviews from the Independent Film Festival Boston's Fall Focus. And to kick things off, Evan saw, I believe, Parasite and is going to tell us his thoughts on it.
Yes, I did see Parasite this past weekend. Ooh. And it's really good. It's really good. We
told you so.
Yep.
It's really good.
You guys were right.
Oh.
Oh, I wish I could say. It's really good, and I really liked it. But this is actually one of the rare instances I wish it hadn't been spoiled for me.
Oh.
And the reason why is I just felt like it lost some of the mystery. Like, it lost some of the mystery. It lost some of the punch for me, knowing that things were happening. And part of it might have just been the fact that I knew, so I was waiting for certain, shoes to drop. And then when they did, I was like more just, I don't know. I found myself distracted thinking about that stuff because I knew it was going to happen and was going to try and see how it was going to happen. Mm-hmm. And so that took me out of the movie. And so I feel like I probably would have enjoyed it more if I hadn't known that stuff was coming and just discover some of it on my own. But I did still like it. I just don't think it hit me as hard as it probably would have if I went in completely fresh.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say I told you, but
you can.
But I can and I will, because that was part of the reason why I thought of any film that might be the film to wait to listen to until you've seen it. Just because
and you were right.
Yes, and that's really what it's all about, is me being right. But I'm thrilled that you liked it.
Oh yeah, it's so good. And yeah, man, it is just brutal. Mm-hmm. I walked out of the theater and I know I've seen a good movie if my brain's all scrambled and I don't even know how to react or how to think. I feel like I was in a daze for like at least 20 minutes after we left the movie theater. Like, we were sitting eating lunch and I still felt like I was not having coherent thoughts that were running through my head. I was just stunned by what I had watched.
Yeah, I can definitely believe that because, I mean, I saw it like maybe 2 weeks ago. I can't remember how long it's been now, but it's been at least 2 weeks, and I can't stop thinking about it. Like, there are scenes that still keep popping into my head, so...
Yeah, I think for me, none are more haunting than the woman getting kicked down the stairs and smacking her head against the wall at the bottom of the stairs. That was haunting.
Ooh, yeah.
Wait, but not the children's birthday party?
What about it? Like all of it?
Yeah, like all of it. The
whole thing? The whole damn stabbing thing?
Yeah.
Well,
So
also
stabby.
the fact that they just throw together, an ad hoc children's birthday party and expect their employees to like drop everything they're fucking doing and be a part of it.
Yeah, that's so shitty.
Yeah, they're dicks.
Yeah, that's rich people for you.
It's so weird because you watch them and you're like, I know they're not trying to be dicks a lot of the time. They're just so rich and so naive.
Yeah, they're so clueless. Yeah, because they're not malicious people. They don't realize they're being dicks. They just are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Anywho, those are my brief thoughts on Parasite, which was really good.
It. Yeah, that's great.
Rock.
All right, I think we're gonna now we're gonna do some very mini reviews on a few films that I saw this past weekend at Independent Film Festival Boston's Fall Focus. So Boston's Independent Film Festival happens every April, and it's a great festival with a lot of independent films, as is in the title. And they've started doing the past couple of years a Fall Focus where it's kind of like a mini 3-day festival because they felt like a week is not enough time to cover all of the independent films in the Boston scene.
Yeah.
So they showed about 9 films, and I saw 4 of them.
Damn.
And they all were great, but really 3 of them were outstanding, and I'm so excited to tell you guys about them.
Yeah.
So the first one I saw is Waves, which is coming out in a couple of weeks, and it's written and directed by Trey Edward Schultz, who also did one of my absolute favorite films of all time, Cretia.
Oh, yeah, Cretia.
Oh, love Cretia, which has if you haven't seen it, and even if you have, you should rewatch it, it has the most amazing turkey in an oven scene I've ever seen in my life. It's incredible. It's such a good and awful Thanksgiving film.
We've basically coined the term pulling a Cretia based on like that movie. It's like if you pull a Cretia, it's like you fucked up something royally or you like fucked up dinner royally.
Yeah, and there's no coming back from it. So yeah, and he also did It Comes at Night, which is such an underrated horror film, and that really is a great meditation on grief and trauma. And I absolutely loved Waves so much. This was probably the film I was the most excited to see of all year because I love his voice as a director. He has such an uncanny knack for depicting descents into madness and into chaos and how familial relations can unravel and spiral so quickly. And he really does a fascinating job on depicting addiction specifically because I believe it was either his cousin or an aunt had an overdose at a family function, which is where Cretia came
died,
from.
Right?
I think so. I don't remember exactly, but possibly. And Waves is also about addiction. And the interesting thing about it is the first half is it's about an African-American family in Florida. And the first half of it focuses on the son in the family and how he's being pushed by his father to be this athlete that excels and his drug addiction. And then the second half of the film is about his sister and how she's dealing with the ramifications of his actions and the loss that they face. So it's an incredible film. It's so moving, so emotional. And when it comes out, we'll talk more about it, but I want everybody to see it because it's riveting. And it also before it came out was talked about as a musical, and all the action is synced really interestingly to the soundtrack. So it's not a musical in the traditional sense, but it definitely utilizes music. And Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross did the score, which is great. So it's definitely
cool.
Yeah, it's definitely a film that needs to be watched. The second film I saw was the new Hirokazu Koreeda film, The Truth, which is a French film, and it's his first non-Japanese language film.
Uh-huh.
And this has Catherine Deneuve and Juliette Binoche, and
They're really leaning into the Frenchness of it.
very
Ethan
much.
Hawke?
And Ethan Hawke, yes, who
Speaking
is great.
Francais?
He's not. He is speaking English. But everyone else is speaking French in it. But yeah, so Catherine Deneuve plays a very famous French film actress, and Juliette Binoche is her daughter, who's a writer. And they haven't seen each other in a while. And there's a film within a film. So Catherine Deneuve is having a book tour because she just came out with her memoirs. And she's also starring in this sci-fi film about a mother who has to live in space and can only come back home once every 7 years. So the mother never ages, but her daughter is aging continuously.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and it's a parallel for their mother-daughter relationship and how strained it is, and how Juliette Binoche felt that her mother was never there for her and always put her career first. And it's a deceptively light film because the score is very light and piano-y and lovely, and there's a lot of humor, but there's definitely a darkness underneath that light in the tension between them and their relationship. So it's a really good film. It's not as gut-wrenching as some of his other films are.
Yeah.
But it definitely explores family dynamics in an interesting way. So definitely a good film to see.
Cool.
And then the third film I saw was Clemency. And this is a woman-directed film, so I'm always excited for women-directed films. Chinonye Chukwu. And it stars Alfre Woodard as a prison warden who oversees death row inmates and their executions. And this film is brutal. It is
You don't say.
Yeah, I know. Such a light topic. It is so depressing and so hard to watch. And I mean that in a good way because it's such an incredible film. The film is clearly a pro-inmate story and definitely anti-death penalty story. And the writer-director, she talked about in an interview how she was reading about an execution or reading about someone dying, and she wanted to really explore what was the life of the person overseeing that, like having to deal with death on such a daily basis. Like, how do you cope with that and how do you function with that? And you definitely see Alfre Woodard being haunted by these executions, and this one execution that went wrong in particular. And the first 10 minutes of the film is just an execution. And it just step
10
by
minutes?
step. 10 minutes. And
Really make you feel it, huh?
yeah, you feel every moment.
Oof.
And it's excruciating. But like I said, I mean that in the best possible way. I don't mean it's an excruciating film to watch and that it's bad. It's so good, but it's so brutal, and that it puts you right there with her and with the inmates experiencing this and how horrible it is. And then the rest of the film is all about another inmate who's on death row and is appealing his execution because he swears that he's played by Aldous Hodge, who is incredible in it, and he is incarcerated and on death row for killing a cop, and he says he didn't do it, and he still up until the end is like, I did not do this. And so it's all about that. It's all about his life. It's all about her life and how she's functioning as the warden. Great film, but very, very difficult to watch. And that one comes out the end of this year. And then the final film I saw, which is so, oh my God, so wonderful, is Portrait of a Lady on Fire, which is the latest film by Celine Sciamma, who is an incredible director, one of my favorites. She did Tomboy and Girlhood, both of which I love. She's a queer woman filmmaker, and all of her films feature queer characters or gender fluidity. And usually she focuses on coming of age films. And this is, I believe, her first film that features adult women. And it's this beautiful love story about a painter who is hired by a mother to paint her daughter, who will not pose for any painters because she's engaged to be married to someone and she doesn't want to marry them. So if she can postpone being painted, she won't have to get married. And because the guy needs to see what she looks like to actually agree. Style. Yeah. It's such a tender film. It's so sensual and romantic, and I can't be effusive enough about how beautiful and wonderful this film is. It made my queer heart so excited on so many levels, but it's such a great film. I just love this. I could just go on and on and on talking about how wonderful it is. And I also am often not satisfied by film endings. This has one of the most beautiful endings I've ever seen in a film.
Ooh.
So
Wow. Damn.
Yeah, so the cinematography is beautiful, the dialogue is beautiful. I believe this was up for the Palme d'Or at Cannes, and I believe it won Best Screenplay at Cannes. So definitely check it out when it comes out, which I believe is the first week in December. But great films, great lineup. I was so excited to see these.
Sweet.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah, it was a jackpot.
Yeah,
I was very excited.
I like seeing how animated you got discussing that last one in particular.
I feel like I can't even talk coherently about Portrait of a Lady on Fire because it's just so good. Oh my God. And I was so excited for it. And sometimes, when you get excited for a film, it lets you down because it's not quite living up to your expectations. But this one exceeded them. I was so excited.
That's always a good thing.
Definitely. So I think now we're going to talk about Last Christmas.
Last Christmas, I gave you my heart, but is that the right line?
That is.
But
you
the
threw
very
it
next
away.
day, you
Is
gave
it
it
you
away.
threw it away or gave it away?
Gave it away, I think.
Gave it away. And no one is so special. I don't know the words very well.
That is excellent, Dave.
Wait.
Bravo.
Does that mean that I've already lost this year's game? You guys know about that game, right? How long can you go without hearing this song into the holiday season?
I don't know this game.
Yeah, you told me about it last year. So
Yeah, it's a game, and it never takes that long, but I feel like we just shot ourselves in the foot on this one.
Wah, wah. Well, get ready for more foot shooting because so you know how I just was so excited about the films I just saw.
Yeah.
And you know how excited I was talking about rom-coms.
yeah.
And I
On
love
the Patreon.
Yeah, and on the Patreon. So listeners, if you haven't listened, you should subscribe to listen to the Patreon content so you can hear all of us talk about rom-coms. Well, I love a good rom-com. I was very excited for this. And let me tell you.
I know where you're going.
Do you?
Maybe.
This film is a hot ass fucking mess.
Ah.
I fucking hated it, and I'm so angry about this film because for various reasons that we're going to get into, but mostly because I was so excited for this because I just wanted a lovely, Christmassy, wintry, fun, fluffy romance, and I love Emilia Clarke. I love her as Dany on Game of Thrones. I love her even in terrible movies, terrible trash movies like Me Before You. I love her in everything. And I really enjoyed Henry Golding in Crazy Rich Asians. So I was excited to see an interracial romance. I was here for it. Oh, and this movie let me down in so many ways. So let's get into it. So
Let's dig in.
let's
Hold
dig
on.
in. Yes.
I know what the problem is.
Do you?
I do. And
All right.
this movie is the stories to different. Emma Thompson and Greg Wise are married.
That's true.
You don't want married people writing a screenplay together. That's no good.
It's
Definitely
junk
not
already.
a rom-com.
No. Get out of here with your real fucking happiness.
I know,
We
seriously.
don't want to hear it.
Fake happiness only.
That's right. Get that trash out.
Also, I just have to go ahead and say this. I know you just said that you loved Henry Golding in Crazy Rich Asians, but
I
I
did.
think he is one of the most boring performers I've ever seen in my life.
Well, first of all, I didn't say I loved him. I said I liked him. But
Ah.
it's a slight distinction. But I do love him in this film. And that's, I can say he is really great and not boring. I mean, you may feel differently, but he was not boring at all. And actually, he and Emilia Clarke had a really great chemistry and a great rapport.
So chemistry was not the problem with this movie.
Chemistry was not the problem. The two leads are absolutely overflowing with charisma. They are great. If the whole film was just them together, the film would be really, really well done. But unfortunately, alas, it is not. So Emilia Clarke stars as Kate, and she is a very cynical and jaded Christmas employee. She works for Michelle Yeoh. Also who I love, but we're going to get into that in a moment too. she works for Michelle Yeoh at this Christmas shop, and she has to dress like an elf. So in a lot of the film, she's dressed like an elf. And her life is a mess. She feels she's a mess. She describes herself that way a lot. So that's how you know she's a mess. She's also described as being the most selfish woman, which again, I don't really ever see her as being selfish, but we're supposed to think that because we're told she is rather, than any other, knowing through any other way. But basically it feels like she's just being shamed because she likes to go out and have a good time and have sex with different people. And as if that's somehow a shitty thing and makes her a shitty person. So I wasn't really here for the sex shaming.
Yeah.
Right off the bat. But yeah, so she in very rom-com fashion, her and Henry Golding, who plays Tom, have a meet cute where she sees him outside of her Christmas shop window. And then later in the film, they literally bump into each other and like, oh, what are you doing here? That thing. And he, in contrast to her, is very, very neat, very organized, very, very much seems to have his life together, seems to know what he wants to do, where she doesn't. Oh, actually, I take that back. She does know what she wants to do. She wants to be a singer, and she's going on auditions. She loves George Michael. And the other probably only good thing I could say about the film is that they play a lot of George Michael music throughout. So your mileage may vary. If you don't like George Michael, this movie is not for you. But even if you do, this movie's still probably not for you. Just because it's so bad. And the reason it's so bad is because of all the fucking racism throughout the film. Yes.
I was not expecting you to say that.
Yes. Throughout the film, there are racist comments. Not only that, Michelle Yeoh is basically playing a dragon lady trope minus the sexual seductress element of that trope. Emilia Clarke's...
then what's the point? Where's the fun in that?
Exactly. There is no fun. So Emilia Clarke's character, Kate, refers to her as her, quote, curt Asian self, which is so awful and gross. And then later in the film, she's talking about the store, and it's a, Christmas shop. And she says something about how, well, she's Chinese, so she has access to all sorts of weird outlets. And I'm like, to get all this weird merchandise. And I'm like, what the fuck is happening? And what makes it even grosser, as if that's not gross enough, is that there's also this subplot about Brexit and how Brexit is really racist and xenophobic because...
What? I mean, it is.
It is, right. But right.
What?
It feels very much shoehorned into the film. And so Kate is... Her family came from former Yugoslavia, and so Emma Thompson has an accent in the film, and she plays her mom. And, of course, she's also playing a stereotype of someone who used to live in a communist country.
Right.
And, when Kate's going to move back home because she's been kicked out of every friend's house that she lived at because she's apparently a terrible person, she goes back home to live with her mom. And there's two houses side by side, and one is like all decked out and Christmassy and lights, and the other's plain. Of course, she's going to the plain house because former
right.
Soviet Union. So it's just like every single trope and stereotype just shoved in. And then there's a bus scene where this guy tells this couple who are not speaking English to go back to their country, and then they're speaking the same language that Emilia Clarke can speak, and so she speaks to them and she's like, "You're welcome here." And it just it doesn't work.
It sounds like it's trying really hard to be woke.
Very much so. Oh, but it gets still worse.
Uh-oh.
Still worse.
Oh no.
Yeah. So.
Oh no.
So Kate, Emilia Clarke's character, she was sick as a kid, and she's telling Henry Golding, Tom, that she had a heart transplant, and she's really self-conscious about her scar that she has on her chest.
Oh, God.
So he asks if he can touch it. Consent. I'm all here for that. But I don't know why films have an obsession with people touching scars. It's very strange to me. And not that doesn't happen in real life, but I don't know. It seems to happen a lot more in films than in real life. But anyway, so he's touching her scar, and they're having this emotional moment where she's talking about how she doesn't feel special, and being sick used to make her feel special, which is kind of fucked up. But he's like being very comforting and nurturing, and they're having a sweet moment. And so he keeps disappearing throughout the film, and he doesn't have a cell phone, and it's weird, and she just chalks it up to his quirkiness.
He's not magical, is he?
Oh, yes, he is, because surprise,
Surprise,
he's a ghost who gave her his heart, and that's the heart she got for her heart transplant.
Hopefully that's all he gave her.
Nice. So so he's a magical Asian. So we have that trope too.
Oh my fucking God. What an okay. Not surprising for a Christmas movie to have a dumb gimmick like that, but good God.
Yeah, it's
good God.
I'm like, as if this movie wasn't like terrible with its racist jokes, and there's a fat joke in there too, because why not? Let's be awful. Might as well go all the way. Ride that train into the ground. Right. Now it also has, one Asian trope. Let's have another in there too. So I was so excited to have this great, interracial romance, and very rarely do Asian men get to be romantic leads, especially, in an interracial, relationship in a film. And he doesn't, not only does he not get to be the actual romantic lead, because this isn't Ghost. This isn't the Ghost and Mrs. Muir. It's like Return to Me, the David Duchovny film with Minnie Driver meets The Sixth Sense. In this weird way. But yeah, he doesn't even get to actually be the romantic lead. So basically,
Return to Me, is that the one where she comes back in the daughter's body? Or is
No,
that's
it's a heart transplant.
Yeah, she gets the heart transplant from his dead wife, and then they start dating, and then he freaks out when he finds it out. Yeah. So not only that, but his whole life is really to teach her how to be a good person, because then even like before she finds out like she has his heart, she's like helping the homeless, and she's raising money for this charity, and she's making amends and apologizing to people. So basically his whole existence in this film is to make her a better person. So a person of color is to help a white person. It's gross. It's so fucking gross.
Yeah. Ugh. Gross.
Yeah. So I'm like, I just was here for a fun, fluffy, lovely romantic comedy, and no. The film basically said, fuck you. No. I'm not giving you that.
The film said, last Christmas, I shamed you into being a better white person.
Precisely. So yes, this movie is trash, and I don't mean good trash. We're not talking about like, Hallmark Channel, Netflix, rom-com, good trash, or potentially good trash. Like, this is just garbage. And the two of them, Emilia Clarke and Henry Golding, and actually even like Michelle Yeoh, they all deserve so much better. So much better. I don't know what the hell Emma Thompson was thinking with this garbage story and garbage screenplay.
Garbage.
Yes.
Every once in a while you gotta take a paycheck, right? So
sure. And I'm I don't know. I should have known when I saw that Paul Feig was the director. He's so hit or miss. Like, either I really enjoy his films like Bridesmaids, love Bridesmaids, but then there's other films that are just no. And this was just a hard
no.
No pass.
Yeah.
Boo.
Boo. Boo hiss. Oh, and as if this film still wasn't bad enough, I forgot. There's one more thing. She also outs her sister, who is either bi or a lesbian. So there's that too.
Wow.
What? She outs her sister? What?
Yes, she outs her sister. So they're at a family dinner, and her sister's like complaining because she doesn't use her full name, Katerina. She shortens it to Kate, and she's like, you're ashamed of where you come from. And then Kate turns around and says, I'm ashamed, you're ashamed. You won't even have your girlfriend here for dinner. And her mother's like, what are you talking about? Her roommate is great. And yeah, so she basically outs her.
Yikes.
Yeah. So
yikes.
Anyway.
Big yikes.
Big yikes indeed.
Or were they playing some kind of asshole bingo?
How many offensive things can we do?
Asshole bingo is the best kind of bingo, Evan.
Without a question.
I mean, they already had the free space, right? So then they're like, we can only go up from here.
I mean, you need the free space. All right, so let's get off of that terrible film. So, Dave, why don't you tell us about Dr. Sleep?
So there's a problem, maybe, with naming your book and then your movie Dr. Sleep. If the movie crawls along at a snail's pace, which Dr. Sleep kind of does.
Oh.
It's 2.5 hours. I'm not surprised.
Now that all being said, I like Dr. Sleep, but Dr. Sleep has some problems.
Ooh, do tell.
Well, it's kind of, when we saw, I don't know what movie, it was a screening. It was one of the screenings where there was an audience too. So there was like Warner Brothers always plays trailers, right? Mm-hmm. So there was a Dr. Sleep trailer, and I remember thinking, okay, is this a sequel to It's a sequel to The Shining. If you know, listeners, if you don't know, Dr. Sleep, the book, is a sequel to The Shining, the book, both by Stephen King.
Right.
And the movie, when you're watching the trailer at least, you can't tell whether Dr. Sleep is a sequel to The Shining, the book, or The Shining, the movie. And it's a sequel. Yeah, it's a sequel to the book, but I think that Mike Flanagan, who wrote and directed the movie, was smart to incorporate some of the production design from Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, because that if you're talking about The Shining, that's what most people know. They may not know the book, but they definitely know the movie, even if they haven't seen it. You know,
it's so iconic. Yeah,
they've definitely seen the axe through the bathroom door, and they've seen Red Rum. You know,
and him riding his big wheel and the twins.
Totally.
And all that.
Like I said, it incorporates a lot of elements from Kubrick's The Shining, and it does it in a pretty, what felt like to me, organic way. I have not read Dr. Sleep. I read The Shining, God, it's got to be, I was in high school when I read it, so it's got to be 30 years ago.
I think I've read it within the last, 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, and I do remember, books don't generally scare me very much, but I do remember a couple of moments, and I don't remember what the moments are. I probably blocked them out. But I remember a couple of moments in the book, The Shining, being so frightening I had to stop reading them and then, start again later. Kind of like when Joey puts The Shining in the freezer in Friends.
Oh, I love that. And then they have to put Little Women in the freezer.
Right, because Beth is sick, and I don't think she's going to get better this time.
No. Oh, I love that episode.
So anyway, though, Dr. Sleep... The story short version is that Danny is now an adult, and he's called Dan, and he's Ewan McGregor, and he's an alcoholic, and he's kind of a drifter, and he ends up in this small town in New Hampshire, and Cliff Curtis meets him and takes him in and becomes his friend and takes him to AA, and he gets sober, and then there's a doctor who's also sober, who's talking at an AA meeting, and he says, I need an orderly at the palliative care house where where I work 3 days a week. And so Danny becomes an orderly, and it turns out he has a gift for making the dying patients there feel at ease in their final moments, and so they start calling him Dr. Sleep. That's where that comes from. Yeah. So there's that storyline with Danny just trying to live his life and, kind of forget that he has The Shining. And then there is this weird group of fucking weirdos. I don't even know what they are. They have
group of fucking weirdos. I love it.
Sounds like a cult.
Yeah. Well, they are, and they're called the Knot, and not the one that, you go to for all your wedding advice.
Right.
But led by you like that one?
Yes.
Led by Rebecca Ferguson, who is effectively creepy. She's not a witch. She's not, I don't know what she is, but she has The Shining, and she is the most powerful one, and she leads this group. And they find other people who have the shine, and then they physically remove it from them and eat it, and they call it the steam, so all right, fine.
Wait, when they eat it, they call it the steam?
Yeah, because it comes out of their bodies like steam, and they have to suck it up.
Got it.
Does the person who loses it, are they dead after that, or they just not have their powers anymore?
Dead.
Okay.
And there is
dead.
There is one truly horrifying moment, and not in a horror movie kind of way. Just I'm really not sure why this moment is in this movie, because it's downright sadistic. The Knot, they find this boy in Iowa who's a baseball prodigy, and it's because he can read the pitcher's mind because he has The Shining, and so he knows every pitch the pitcher's going to pitch, and they kidnap him, and they basically gore him to death and then suck out his steam, and the scene has got to be 6 minutes long, with blood. It's done, I don't want to use the word tasteful, because you don't actually see Rebecca Ferguson stabbing this kid, although you hear it and you see blood spatter, but just the screams
Gross.
And the whatever. Oh yeah, it's so awful. And he's terrified, of course, and he says, "Are you going to hurt me?" And she says, "Yes." And then she stabs him, and it's just oh my God, I cannot believe I'm watching this. And this is not just as somebody who, now every time I see, violence against children in a movie, I get really, really sad because I have children of my own. It's just like, this is like truly horrible. And it's already quite clear that the Knot is the bad element in this movie. They're the bad people. There's really no reason, story-wise, to show them be as awful as this. I mean, they're already killing people and sucking their life force out of them. I don't really think that you get much worse than that.
Right. It kind of sounds like the opening scene from It Chapter 2. It's like, why did we need to watch this disconnected, uber-violent, just shocking, gross thing?
Yeah.
So they can kill a gay person? Of course.
Yeah.
Ugh. Anyway.
So,
that movie irritates me, but that's a whole other tangent.
Well, I also want to, Stephen King, so many of his novels are about, like the dangers that children face. And I just want him to say once and for all, like, what happened to you during your childhood, Stephen King? Jesus Christ. I
mean, is it possible that to, analyze for a moment that he was terrified for his children when he was going through his addictions?
Oh,
yes,
that's entirely
I think
possible.
That is accurate to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because wasn't he like very violent when he was in the throes of his addiction?
Yeah, he was in very bad shape. I don't know if he was physically abusive, but yeah, it was bad.
Yeah.
It was very, very bad.
So that definitely could fuel his obsession. Yeah.
That sounds totally valid. But getting back to the movie, there's a little girl who also lives in New Hampshire, in a different part of New Hampshire, and she has The Shining, and she's at her birthday party, and there's a clown, performing, and he's like, "Oh, I can do all this with spoons," and she's like, "Oh, I can do that too." And then you see her mom and dad taking like the cake into the kitchen, and all of the spoons in the house are on the ceiling.
Ooh.
And she walks in and she's like, "Hey guys, thanks for my birthday party," or whatever she says, and like all the spoons just clatter on the floor, and they're like, "What the fuck?" And then it's like 8 years later, and Danny is sober, and he's rented a room in this house where the previous tenant was a math PhD student, and he had turned the back wall into a blackboard, and they left it like that. And Danny wakes up one morning, and there's just the word "hello" written on the wall with a smiley face and the O. And he writes back "hi," and he starts having conversations with this girl through the wall. And it turns out her name's Abra, as in abracadabra. And she is the most powerful, shining whatever that anyone has ever seen. And Rebecca Ferguson, like, feels her from, like, across the country. And she's like, "We got to go get her and eat her because that'll set us up forever."
That's not creepy at all.
No, exactly. And this is where the movie is like, it's really hit or miss in movies when there's like a supernatural element with like mind shit.
Mind shit.
Yeah, mind shit,
No, but it's true because usually it's either very boring and you don't really get the full scope of it, or or it feels cheesy, or sometimes it really works and it's really tense.
It does happen when you have head business like that in a movie.
Yeah. But think about movies where like, supernatural shit is done poorly, like the Fantastic Four movie, the one with Jessica Alba, where it's just
I
like,
knew you were going to say that one.
Yeah.
That one's terrible.
Exactly. That's when it's bad, right? And then when it's good, it's like, I can't, of course, think of one, but we'll call Dr. Sleep a good one. And because it's very, very physical. You see, for example, Rebecca Ferguson like meditates so that she can find out where Abra is. And you see her like flying over the planet and like going through neighborhoods and things like that. And that's kind of cool,
Yeah, that sounds very cool.
She finds Abra's house and she goes into it. And it turns out Abra is just stronger than she is. And so you see there's this really cool moment where they act like The Shining is, and I'm just going to call it The Shining because they all call it something different and we know it as The Shining. But they act like The Shining is actually kind of like a library where you can store everything you've ever learned about a person and call it up whenever you need it. And that's actually kind of cool. So Abra has a bunch of like file cabinets in her room in her mind. And so Rebecca Ferguson is going through them and Abra catches her, and like when she kicks her out of her mind, it shows Rebecca Ferguson's body flying across the country and then like landing in her own body where she's meditating and then falling off like the top of this truck where she's got her stuff set up and hitting the ground. And it's actually really, it sounds stupid me describing it, but it's really cool. It's like she gets hit by something, falls off this truck, but she's getting hit by herself. It's really cool.
Ooh, no, that doesn't sound stupid at all.
And so there's a lot of the movie like that. But the thing about this is, and Dr. Sleep is kind of a shorter book shorter in air quotes, shorter
for
book
Stephen King standards.
It's about 550 pages, something like that.
Oh,
so
that's like a short story for him.
Yeah. So it's like just too long to be a movie, but not quite long enough to be like a limited TV series probably. But it probably would have worked better as a limited TV series. What's really cool is that you've got a really, really low-key Ewan McGregor. And when I say low-key, I don't mean he's, acting without energy. I just mean that he's, Danny's trying to live under the radar. But, of course, Danny has to, come out and help Abra save herself so that she doesn't get eaten. So they have to go to the Overlook Hotel, of course, because the place has The Shining. So we can go there, and she'll find us there, and we don't have to involve any other people or any shit like that. And throughout the course of his life, with the help of, Dick Halloran, he has been catching all the ghosts who have been following him since he left the Overlook Hotel and like literally putting them in boxes in his mind and trapping them. And so his idea is that he's going to get Rebecca Ferguson into the Overlook Hotel and open up all the boxes and let like the twins and the guy who says it's a great party and his father, who's played by Henry Thomas, by the way.
Yeah, I read that on IMDb, and I was like, "Oh, interesting choice."
There's actually a really good moment where Dan goes to the bar. It's just like the scene where Jack Nicholson sits down, and there's Lloyd, the bartender, all of a sudden. Dan goes in there. The bar is empty. There's an empty glass on the bar. Dan's been sober 8 years, and then he opens his eyes, and his father, who looks very much like Jack Nicholson from The Shining, and this is what I'm talking about with production design and character stuff, that Mike Flanagan took from Kubrick's movie. But anyway, adult Dan has a conversation with his father, Jack Torrance, who is the bartender in this scene, and Ewan McGregor, you kind of forget what a great actor he can be, because he's been in so many movies that are just not worthy of his talent.
That is so true.
Yeah, and the kind of depths of emotion that he wrenches out of this, short conversation he has with his father about what his childhood was like after they left the Overlook Hotel. You just it almost made me cry.
Wow.
So yeah. So anyway, the cool thing is Rebecca Ferguson finds them. She finds Abra and Dan in the hotel, and Dan unleashes all the ghosts on her to kill her, which they do. And they have this really cool conversation where she's like, "Oh my God, how did I miss you? Where have you been? You're even stronger than she is." But it is slow. I think it was good.
Excellent. I was going to say, it sounds like if you're a fan of Mike Flanagan's films, you will like this one as well.
Yeah, Oculus is fine. I liked Oculus until they killed Karen Gillan, and then I was like, wait a minute, how can you kill Karen Gillan? Spoiler.
That was a spoiler because I haven't seen Oculus
yet.
Oh, well.
Oops.
Sorry.
No worries.
So, yeah, and then which Ouija did he do? He did the second one. Right?
Origin of Evil.
Yeah.
O2.
Then that one was decent.
That one was good until it just devolved into the Nazi thing and just was stupid.
Yeah. So, anyway, and he did Gerald's Game, which Chris spoke very highly of. So,
yeah. I guess I'm curious, how is the depiction of Danny or Dan's alcoholism? And I'm curious because I didn't see Dr. Sleep yet, but I know Mike Flanagan explores kind of, different themes in his horror films. So I was kind of curious, his take and approach on the alcoholism element in the film.
The alcoholism is more of, it's brief, it's kind of part of the setup. When you first meet Dan, he's drunk at a bar playing pool, and he beats the shit out of some guy, and he gets kicked out of the bar, and this woman is really turned on by it, so he goes home with her. As far as the addiction goes, it focuses more on recovery and AA than it does the actual addiction itself.
Oh, but that's interesting too.
Yeah. So that's Dr. Sleep. I mean, you know, it's
sounds
not
really good.
Yeah, it's not The Shining, but it's got its moments, and the woman in the bathtub appears several times, I should add.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
All right, so let's talk about our last film, which is the documentary Making Waves: The Art of Cinematic Sound.
And I have to say, how exciting to end the podcast on a movie about making sound.
I know.
I actually found this really interesting.
Me too.
Yeah.
I found it utterly fascinating.
I actually did. I know. I was just going to say, actually, interesting is an understatement. It's underselling it.
To give the listeners an indication, I put it on last night later than and I was watching it and I thought to myself, okay, if I can, I don't know, maybe even make it just halfway through the documentary, like maybe I can watch a little more tomorrow. We stayed up and we watched the rest of it. We watched the whole thing, the whole hour and a half, and didn't end up going to bed till like 1. So that should give you an indication of how interesting it was.
Yeah, I also rewatched parts too because I was like, that was really interesting. So I went back and rewatched a few. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I agree. I thought I was so fascinated by it, and I wanted more. Like, I could have easily watched like more on all of the elements of sound design and sound engineering.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, it's directed by Mitch Costin, who is a sound editor herself, and I guess she's been wanting to make this for a while, but due to rights issues of trying to get clips from all of these really iconic films, that was one of her stumbling blocks. But I guess within the last couple of years, they've changed some of the laws around fair use. So it's now much easier to do a film like this where you can just, for the purposes of academic discussion, you can get your hands on these things and you could talk about them without having to jump through all kinds of crazy loopholes and pay $1 billion to everybody.
Yeah, that would definitely be a roadblock.
Yeah. But I mean, I love this film. I love that it breaks down, there's a few different ways it approaches the information of sound editing, sound design in films. First, it kind of takes like a historical approach and kind of shows you major points in the process, going back to Edison and inventing the phonograph and inventing the film camera, and the idea that you couldn't sync sound and picture until the 1920s when they started actually making movies with sound. And so I like that it's a little bit of history. It highlights kind of iconic breakthroughs. It calls out specific years. I like that when it does that, there's of course a sound element to it. There's kind of like its own unique sound that comes up when it's like breaking to a new segment. I love that it's, interviews with filmmakers across the gamut, but, ones that you'd expect: George Lucas, Steven Spielberg, David Lynch, Ang Lee, Sofia Coppola, like the list, Ryan Coogler, like there's just Barbra Streisand. And that was a whole fascinating bit about how important the sound was on Barbra Streisand's A Star Is Born, and how they were originally going to use pre-recorded segments for the songs, and how she was like, no, we need to do this live, and about how much of her own money that she invested in the movie to make it sound good.
Right. Yeah, she said like $1 million just to do the sound design on like a $9 million budget film, which I mean, that's a large chunk. And and I thought that was really interesting that that on Funny Girl, William Wyler asked her, like, oh, what do you think of this final performance? And it was pre-recorded, and she's like, it can be better. We need to do it live. But I also thought it was really, really great to kind of call out these films that had these, revolutionary moments, like A Star Is Born, which I never would have thought was so important to sound design.
Right.
But also obviously Star Wars. And the Star Wars segment might have been my favorite, and not just because I love Star Wars, but I thought I found it fascinating hearing about, and maybe other people know this, but I didn't, hearing about that, a bear does the Wookiee sounds, and like seeing,
a bear who wanted bread.
Right. Yeah. Bread specifically. And he gets so excited over bread, and like Ben Bart doing.
I know how he feels about the bread, man.
I mean, bread is great.
I mean, you get a good baguette or a good ciabatta, and I am, oh man,
are you
a
a
good
happy
pumpernickel?
camper?
I mean, forget it.
I like sesame and rye bread. Anyway, or like hitting like a power line with, or like an electric wire with a wrench makes the lightsaber, or not lightsaber,
the blaster
sounds, right? And like a scuba tank does the Darth Vader sounds, and like that was
the
was
methodology.
So interesting. Yes, it was
showing the methodology was just so cool to hear the technique, because so many of these sound designers, they were obsessed with sound from when they were kids, and so they would do all kinds of stuff. They would play, and the things that they did, you're like, who would think to try that?
Well, the thing especially that I liked with Star Wars is that, having seen Star Wars and having enjoyed it literally my entire life, people focus so heavily on how groundbreaking it was for the visual effects, which it was. And, and talking about, the setup of, how it's a great Bildungsroman and, and how it's the hero's journey and all of that and all those thematic elements. But I don't hear people talking about how groundbreaking the sound is. And it really is. And what's so interesting about it to me, too, is that how wildly it diverged from other sci-fi films. Like, it didn't use synthesizers. George Lucas was so focused on having real sounds. And when I watched it as a kid, I don't think I could have picked up on that, but yet there is a very grounding element to it. So even if you're not consciously aware, you're subconsciously aware of it. And I thought it was great, like focusing on, Francis Ford Coppola and Apocalypse Now and David Lynch and Eraserhead, and how, Stanley Kubrick was so important, and how these directors in the 70s really changed, and their relationships with their sound designers really changed the game of, filmmaking.
Yeah, I loved them explaining the development of stereo sound and the way that the visual aids that they were using. That was really awesome. It was really, really cool to see, but also was very accessible. That's one of the things about this documentary. It's extremely accessible. And it takes concepts that I would say normally on paper are kind of confusing for someone who's not a sound person or an audiophile, but they do a really good job of making it easy to understand, especially when they switch from talking about stereo sound to the 6-speaker surround sound system.
Yes.
That is really easy to understand, and I love the way that they use visual aids, and I love that the way they break down all the different I guess you could call them specialties within the overall sound design, and they use the orchestra analogy, and they show the different sections over the orchestra, like sound effects and ADR and just all the different ways that the sound has to come together, and how many different people are working on it at any given time, how many different tracks are coming together to tell a story. I just found this fucking fascinating as hell.
No, it was. And even talking about, the orchestra analogy, and talking about, Apocalypse Now, and how Francis Ford Coppola had every single he had a person focusing on a different sound. So every single sound designer was, in charge of a certain sound, and how they would adjust that sound depending on the scene. Like if someone was dying, I remember they talked about how Pat Jackson lowered the boat sound. And that's just little things like that are so pivotal to the success of a film. Or Ang Lee talking about how the wind in Brokeback Mountain is a character, and how it also underscores the character's, isolation or their repression. And it adds so much. Or the ambiance and, the sound ambiance in Lost in Translation, and just... Yeah, I wanted more. I wish this was a series rather than just, an hour and a half documentary, because every single part, from the Foley artists and, the mixing and the soundtrack and all of it, I found it so compelling and just interesting. And when it was information that I knew, I didn't feel bored. I didn't feel I already know this. And then there was a lot of information I didn't know, or I didn't maybe know as much. And I felt just... Yeah, I felt it was fascinating too.
Well, I liked it, but I don't think I loved it the way you guys did. You guys sound like you want to marry it. I mean, geez.
I love the films that they talk about, and it just made me think about them in a whole new light. I think that's why I got so excited.
Yeah. I agree 100%. Yeah, because I'm not an audiophile by any means, and I can appreciate music and sound, but this gave me a different level of appreciation.
Okay.
I really immensely enjoyed this documentary, and I highly recommend it.
Yeah. What I found really striking while watching it was, at first, I was like, the lack of people of color in sound design and engineering roles. And so it was great to see 2 people of color who worked on Selma. And they talked about the importance of that. I would have liked to have heard a little bit more, because we also get a snippet of, you know, a couple of women talking about how, and I thought this is not surprising at all, but I'm glad that somebody brought this up about how she was told, or she's heard, oh, well, you're working on a big, you know, action war film. We should really get a man to work on the sound. And it's like, what are you talking about? Like, you know, you're just pushing buttons, and, you know, were you in a war? And so not surprising that there's sexism in, you know, that field of the film industry.
Totally.
The one thing, speaking of that, also the one thing that I will say that really did bother me about the documentary was seeing Laster.
Oh yeah, I thought about that too.
Yeah, I was like, what the fuck is he doing here? Like, Jesus, we don't need to hear from him.
Yeah,
at all.
Cancel him.
Right.
We're all set.
John Lasseter.
Oh, John Lasseter. Okay.
Yeah, from Pixar, who is now not at Pixar, thankfully, but is now running Skydance Animation. But anyway, yeah, I was like, why is he here? And it surprised me. And, you know, I kind of hate saying this, but it's true. It surprised me that in a woman-directed documentary, he's there. Like, that's just really surprising to me.
That just seemed like the kind of thing you cut.
Right. Because that's what I was thinking. I was like, maybe she had interview footage of him before it all, you know, came out. But that happened 2 years ago, you know, so that, yeah, his part could have been excised. But, yeah, but I'm glad there was talk of, you know, inequities in the field, but... yeah, didn't need to see Laster. But other than that, I thought it was a really interesting documentary. And I also liked how it broke it down chronologically as well as by the facets of sound design. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Let's recap the films and see what people should see. So Parasite, definitely go see.
See it.
Definitely.
And then go back and listen to the episode.
Yes. And then go see Parasite again, maybe. Waves, definitely see it when it comes out. The Truth, yes, see it also when it comes out. Does not have a release date yet, but when it does, it probably will be next year. Clemency, yes. Portrait of a Lady on Fire, yes, definitely go see that. Last Christmas, no. Do not see that. That is such a hard no. Dr. Sleep?
Yeah, sure.
All right. And Making Waves, I think we all say yes, you should see it.
For sure.
Why not?
You're like, sure.
Yeah, okay. You know, if you must see it. Yeah.
If you twist my arm.
There's worse ways to spend an hour and a half.
There really are.
Yeah, probably watching Last Christmas.
Oh, definitely. Ugh, gross. Ugh, it's horrible.
Your reaction is just priceless.
Thank you.
That gross.
It really, oh my God, that movie just made me so angry. I could barely even read my notes when I was looking back over them because I was so angry. I was like angry scribbling.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it's so bad. I kind of want you guys to see it just so we can all talk about how bad it is, but I don't want to subject you to that because it's so terrible. All right, well, that's going to do it for this episode of Spoiler Piece Theater. Evan, why don't you tell us where you can find us?
You can get us anywhere you can get podcasts, pretty much. But you can also find us at our website, which is spoilerpiece.com. You can send us an email or spoilerpiece@gmail.com if you want to get in touch with us. You can also reach out to us. We're at Spoilerpiece on Twitter and on Instagram. And we're Spoiler Piece Theater on Facebook. And you can also give us a call.
862-21 Peace. Sorry, were you going to? Oh,
I wasn't sure if you were going to take me up on my offer. So give us a call, leave us a message. We might play it on the show. We'll probably talk about it. We were not going to make any promises.
But we definitely want to hear from you. That is the point.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, tell us we're wrong, tell us we're right, or just say hi and tell us what you do while listening to the show. I know Daniel was watering his plants for a while listening to the show. I don't know if that's still a thing. Daniel, get back to us. Hi,
Daniel.
If you love the show, Please rate and review us on your podcast platform of choice. Please, please, please. Really appreciate it. It helps more people find the show. And if you really, really like the show and you've got money to spare, head over to patreon.com/spoilerpiece and sign up to become a patron for just $5 a month. We give exclusive audio each week, so something we don't give to everybody else. There's also opportunities to vote in our poll, and we need to get one up for this month. But basically, you guys get to vote on a movie that we watch, then we watch and talk about it at the end of the month. And there's also even a tier for $10 a month where you can just straight up pick movies for us to watch. We currently have one patron in that tier, and I guess we'll see what she picks for us.
I'm very intrigued to see what she picks.
So anyway, sign up for Patreon. And if you're already a supporter, thank you, and we love you. And I think that's all for my spiel.
That was a good spiel. All right. Well, I am Megan Kearns. I'm a freelance writer and film critic, editor of Bitchflix, and a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association. And you can find me on Twitter at OpinionSWorld.
My name is Evan Crean. I'm editor for The Independent. I am co-chair of BOFCA and co-author of your 80s movie guide to better living. And you can follow me on Twitter and on Letterboxd as Real Recon.
And I'm Dave Riedel. I write for Salt Lake City Weekly and Orlando Weekly. And you can find me on Twitter, Letterboxd, and Instagram as Dave Sees Movies and Boston Online Film Critics Association person, blah, blah.
All right.
Blah, blah.
See you next week.